have tried to record this 2 times. I just finished a recording about 16 minutes long, and I just found out that I didn't click record on the camera. It's okay. Let's get right into this. We got to talk about college football and the Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban beef with Jackson State. Everything is a mess. I think the college football world is burning down right now, and if you're not a fan of either of those two teams, you're probably just laughing with joy because it's giving you something entertaining from a sport that is still 3 months away. But I will say I do have a dog in this fight. I am a big A&M guy. I'm a big A&M fan. I've gone to multiple games. I even was at the Texas A&M Alabama game in which they beat the Dragon as the first unranked team since 2007, which is something I'll talk about in a minute. But we have to get all the context out there first before I dive into why these certain events happened and giving you more context beneath the service level, because now that the national media is talking about it, a lot of narratives are being pushed that are just completely untrue. First off, it all started with Nick Saban, who grabbed a microphone and basically went, all right, guys, I understand I have a microphone right here. All right, guys, NIL happened. I had the second recruiting class this past recruiting cycle. A&M, we all know who it was, bought all their players. But we didn't do that. We didn't do that. Here at Alabama, we are goody goods. We're the villains apparently to everyone else, but in reality, we're the heroes. We're the guys you should root for. He didn't say all that, but he did say, A&M, y'all bought y'all players. Jackson State, you bought the #1 overall player. Here we don't do that. We don't do that here at Alabama. We're good. We would never do that. We would never incentivize with NIL deals, because you know what? Here at Alabama, you want to play, you want to go win championships the honorable way. And then Jimbo Fisher got on the mic and he said, emergency press conference, everyone get in line because Nick Saban, you're a fraud. He tried calling me. I ain't picking up for him. I don't like that guy. I did not work with that guy again for a reason, because I did not want to be around that guy. And it is over between me and him as a relationship, as a friend, nothing. And now everyone's got a big old circle for October 8th as Texas A&M travels to Tuscaloosa to battle with Alabama for the rematch, where A&M should be ranked this time. I'd be concerned if they weren't. I'd be very concerned. Okay, let's talk about all the context that goes behind the Texas A&M in their greatest recruiting class of all time. Alright, I'm going to talk about some facts when it comes to this recruiting class and the storm that brewed that made it possible. Number one, you beat the #1 overall team as an unranked team since 2007. That has never happened, okay? That's one big deal, especially when you had a long list of recruits that went to go see that game in which you have a backup quarterback beat them, which is something that usually would never fit the mold with Alabama. Usually you needed a dynamic quarterback and a lot of luck going your way to beat that team. And you beat them with a backup and a really good defense that dominated their offensive line, especially during a down year for Alabama in their terms. But you still were able to do that in front of recruits in one of the most electric atmospheres that I've ever been to. I mean, if I got hyped as much as I did, I couldn't imagine what it was like for a recruit to be down at the ground level when the storm was like, everyone stormed the field. It was insanity. That is a big deal. It might not be a big deal to you if you're an Oregon fan. It might not be a big deal if you're an Ohio State fan. But when we're talking about Texas A&M, it was a big deal to them. It was mentioned twice in a graduation ceremony during 2 speeches. I mean, it was a huge deal for us, and it was a huge deal to these recruits to go see, hey, this team in Texas can go beat Alabama. And it's going to be the same thing for Texas when Texas goes and faces Alabama. When Alabama comes into town, if they're able to put up a fight and let alone beat them, they're going to have a huge swing in momentum and when it comes to recruiting as well. I mean, it's a big deal to beat Alabama. Whether it's at home or away, it's a huge deal. So when A&M did it, it was a huge deal and it gave them a ton of momentum. It got Walter Nolan to commit, I think, a week later. I mean, that's a huge deal. The #2 overall player when it comes to ESPN recruiting bases. Like that dude, or he might have been #1, but he was #2 in a lot of recruiting bases that Walter Nolan commits to Texas A&M between him or Tennessee, which was his hometown team, which was insane to think about. But another fact we have to consider, all the competition that usually A&M has to deal with when it comes to recruiting, we're dealing with a lot of down years. The only teams that weren't really struggling was Alabama and Georgia. I mean, truly think about it. Texas went 5-7. Oklahoma disappointed, lost their head coach and lost most of their recruiting class. LSU lost their head coach. Florida State didn't lose their head coach, I don't believe, but still had a down year. Florida lost their head coach. Miami swapped head coaches and still had some momentum towards the end of their recruiting cycle. Baylor did a fantastic job. They're a private institution, though, so they have a GPA average that you have to meet in order to be a part of the Baylor football team. So the amount of competitors that you have to deal with when it comes to this recruiting base, specifically the recruiting base in Houston. Houston had a buttload of recruits that were fantastic prospects. We're talking Denver Harris, Chris Marshall, who became a 5-star later in the cycle. Guys like that were now being competed against with a Texas A&M team that had a ton of momentum in the COVID year when you had a New Year's Six Bowl. They had a disappointing year this year, going 8-4, obviously, with a backup quarterback. And now they're only having to face guys, I guess, like Alabama, in which I'm sure if you want to blame it on NIL, go ahead. There's been nothing illegal that has been shown with Texas A&M and what they've done with NIL collectives. They're just damn good at their job, and you can be mad at that all you want. Also, A&M has deep pockets. That's the truth of it. They have the #1 revenue right there with Texas, honestly tied. And you can just get mad at that all you want, but if you're going to get mad at Texas A&M, you got to get mad at Texas as well, as Texas offered $50,000 for offensive linemen to go join in. Kelvin Banks and Devon Campbell did the exact same thing and went to Texas. And you know what? Texas went 5-7 and lost to Kansas. But no one wants to get mad at them because it's Texas. And so now we have to start saying, hey, it's Texas A&M. They're going to do whatever they're going to do to be able to become a national title contender. They have national title level facilities, stadium, fans, and honestly, they now have the talent to do so. It's whether they capitalize on that talent or not. And now we're having to deal with guys like Emmanuel Ancho, who is just looking at the surface level and saying, hey, why is this 8-4 team all of a sudden getting the #1 overall recruiting class? When we don't realize Jimbo's a good recruiter. A&M didn't just come out of the 25th spot and become the best team in the nation when it comes to recruiting. They were circling around that top 10 range and top 5 for a long time. On top of that, you have to think about all the other teams that were struggling around them. It was the perfect storm for Texas A&M to capitalize on, and they had the best recruiter in the nation, and they capitalized on it. And you know what that recruiter does a really damn good job at? Defensive linemen. You know what Texas A&M brought in the most of? Defensive linemen. It is not a surprise this happened. And I'm not naive. I'm not going to say NIL had no effect, but I'm going to say they did it what they could within the parameters. They didn't do it illegally, and it wasn't the only thing that was the biggest influence when it came to this. Not to mention, shout out to Bobby Taylor. Bobby Taylor was probably one of the best recruiters, that was a high school athlete for Texas A&M. He was a commit, and he built this entire brand, this family, to come in and be a big class for Texas A&M. It was one of those things that you see when we watch the Miami documentaries of these guys that band together, and we're going to be the class. This is going to be the class that brings in Texas A&M another championship. People are mad that Evan Stewart picked Texas A&M over Texas. And now it's starting to look like Evan Stewart probably made the best decision that he could have. And I think Nick Saban made these comments because his ego and what he feels is threats. He feels that there's a lot of threats in the SEC that weren't as big as they previously were. I wouldn't be surprised if he feels threatened by LSU soon with Brian Kelly. They just need to get some momentum going. But I want to talk about what is making Nick Saban say these comments. Say you want about Nick Saban, I don't think he's scared. I want to be very clear. I don't think Nick Saban is scared of anybody. I don't want to think he's just this big guy that's like, oh my God, Texas A&M, oh my God, Georgia. I don't think he's scared of anybody. This dude is a competitor for a reason. I think what he pisses me off the most, and what bothered me by his comments, wasn't the disrespect that he gave to Jimbo Fisher. I'm sure it upset Jimbo Fisher clearly in that press conference, and it very much upset Deion Sanders, who's supposed to talk in about 23 minutes. And by the time this video comes out, he would already have said a bunch of stuff, which I won't be able to put in the video, but you'll be able to see him. I might be able to put a couple of quote tweets by the time I'm editing this, and I'll get to the section about Jackson State in a minute. But I do feel that Nick Saban kind of comes off as he is whining a little bit. I'm saying he's trying to act like he's the victim here, as if Alabama has this halo above their head. They've done nothing wrong, guys. Listen, here at Alabama, we don't buy players. The other competitors in the SEC that want to get on our level, that we want parity in this sport. We want true, honest parity. But when it comes to threats to us, no, they bought their players. And it's just not true. It's just not true. You can say that, you can cope with that, and you can reach out to Jimbo Fisher, but he put the phone down for a reason. And I understand Alabama does not have as deep of boosters as people may think. And I'm sure this is more of a plea to get more boosters, to give up more money, to get a bigger NIL collective. From the quote that he said, it made it sound like, I mean, Alabama dropped to the 15th overall recruiting class. No, y'all had number 2. Guys, you had number 2. Georgia was still top 5. And no one was blinking an eye when Texas got number 5 after going at a negative record. I mean, come on now. Let's not try to pick and choose our battles here. And now, October 8th, circle that date, man. Circle that date, because it's going to be probably the best game before the national championship, honestly. Because I think this is going to be one of those games where those head coaches are either going to do one of those, like, handshake and get the hell out of there. If Alabama loses that game at home, whoo, I can't imagine what the boos are going to be like, what the fans are going to say. It's going to be madness. I'm sure the hype is going to get only bigger from here. We have the whole summer in front of us, guys. We're still in late May. We still got June, July, and the SEC. I think the conferences still are going to happen. The preseason, like the little conferences where they'll talk. I'm sure they'll talk at that point, which will be very interesting. You got Paul Feinbaum, I'm sure, saying a bunch of blasphemy on Twitter. I haven't checked that. But I don't want to miss one piece of this that's kind of being blown over when we're talking about all this. I understand Jackson State isn't this perennial college football team, but it's not as crazy as people want it to be that Deion Sanders pulled Travis Hunter. I would like to say, I just checked my phone, Jordan Addison just went to USC reportedly. I think Texas has just taken a huge L with that one, because I think they could have beaten Alabama if they brought in Jordan Addison, or at least made it interesting. But let's talk about Travis Hunter. Let's not lose sight of what I wanted to talk about specifically here with Jackson State. I don't know Travis Hunter personally. I don't know what his motives are. But from what it seems like from the surface level, I can't go underneath because I don't know the guy. Also, if you ever see this video, Travis Hunter, man, you're probably one of the top guys I would want to interview. Just ask questions on what you're building at Jackson State, because I think it's truly remarkable. And I wasn't mad when you did it. A lot of people were mad that you didn't go to Florida State, man. Go build something. Go build your own legacy. I think that's what they're trying to do at Jackson State. By all means, if there's an NIL deal, so be it. But if he is having his goal to be the best NFL prospect possible and be the most ready for the NFL, wouldn't you want to go play for Deion Sanders, the greatest corner of all time potentially, depending on who you talk to? I mean, we all see Deion Sanders in a positive light. He is a guy that is just likable. And I see it as, man, do you want to go struggle at Florida State? One of the most disappointing programs right now that hasn't produced a lot of NFL talent as of recent? Or you want to go to Jackson State, build your own legacy, and go be something great at a school that is trying to build something? And I think, we forget there's other players that transferred to Jackson State that were good players. There was other recruits that committed, I believe another 4-star that went to Jackson State. I mean, he's just not on an island by himself. Obviously, when we're talking about the number 1 recruit, he's on an island of that tier. But, let's not disrespect Jackson State and what Deion Sanders is trying to build. He's clearly trying to do something fantastic there, and we should celebrate that instead of trying to tear it down. And that's what kind of bothers me about Nick Saban's comments as well. They're trying to tear it down, and we want parity in college football, right? We were so tired of Clemson and Alabama for 4 straight years. It was basically the same thing as Warriors-Cavs. We were so bored of this parity not existing, and now that we're potentially getting some, oh, well, if it's not my team, if my team's not the one contending, then screw all this. No, we want parity in college football, and this is how it happens. And now you got to start dealing with it. I can't believe this. Sorry, I went on a whole rant for this, but thank you so much for watching. If you're at this point of the video, thank you so much for watching. We are on the road to 1,000 subs. Shout out to everyone that's new here. I understand my college football content tends to not do as well as I'd like it to, but I'm going to keep posting whatever I want on this channel, and I want to talk about college football. Let me know. Give me a score prediction of what's going to happen at the Texas A&M Alabama game, and let me know what you think about the whole situation. If I'm in the wrong, I understand this is a very fluid situation, something that I say could have been completely different now in a couple hours. But shout out to everyone. Shout out to all the new subs here. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.